Welcome back. I'm Neil Alexander from CDM in Cali, and in this chapter we're going to continue with how to choose a suitable implementation research design. There are many different study designs. You can read about them in the book by Bonita and others that's published by WHO, and you can get it as a free download. The details are in the bibliography at the end. But for now, we're just very simply going to distinguish between observational studies on the one hand and experimental or intervention studies on the other. In observational studies, the researcher takes their measurements, but it's not their intention to intervene and change the situation. Within intervention studies, they can be experimental, like a randomized trial, or they can be quasi-experimental, like a before and after design, where you do an intervention and see how things change from before. Observational studies tend to be easier and cheaper to carry out, but without providing, on the whole, as strong evidence as experimental ones. And that's quantified in frameworks like this, the GRADE guidelines here. And in turn, when WHO made recommendations, then it's been found that they have a higher take-up if the degree of evidence is stronger in these terms. Now, in the previous chapter, we saw different kinds of research objectives and the kinds of research questions that go with them. In this slide and the next few ones, we're going to see what kinds of designs might be suitable for each kind of objective. Here we've got exploratory and descriptive objectives. By definition, they don't have anything to do with intervention, so observational designs are more suitable. Now, within observational designs, there's a range of qualitative and quantitative methods available. For implementation research, the qualitative ones may be more relevant, and they include ethnography, case studies, key informant interviews, and focus groups. Still within exploratory and descriptive objectives, quantitative methods such as surveys also may be useful in observational designs. And finally, mixed methods, meaning combinations of qualitative and quantitative methods, can be used in different combinations, first one, then the other, or the other way around, and so on. So moving on, the influence kind of objective is where an interventional design such as a trial is the most relevant. So here we've got a schematic diagram of a cluster randomized trial to evaluate the effectiveness of e-health supported patient recruitment called Transform in primary care research. It was done in 5 countries, and between them they included primary care centres, which were the clusters which were randomized to either the Transform arm, 20 of them, and 20 to the control arm, with the outcomes being compared between the 2 arms. For the explain type of objective, which we said was more analytic than the explore or describe objectives, we might use either an observational or an intervention design. If an intervention one, then a quasi-experimental design might be more suitable than an experimental one, like a randomized trial. And here we've got an illustration of one kind of quasi-experimental design called the before and after or interrupted time series design. And here we've got a quote from a paper which argues for the importance of this design in quality improvement research. How does it work? Well, in the figure here we've got time on the horizontal axis and an outcome of interest on the vertical axis. Let's say, for example, that prior to the intervention, the outcome's got a steady trend. Then we might assume that had we not intervened here, it would have continued in the same way, and that's the dotted line there. Well, that's quite an assumption, and it does make the evidence less strong than if we'd done a randomized trial. However, what it lets us do is compare what actually happened in the solid line with the counterfactual, the assumed counterfactual data in the dotted line. And if you remember the research question about dengue in the previous chapter, this is how the comparison, the C component of PICO, was made. Before and after the intervention were compared. Finally, for the predict kind of objective, then observational designs may be more relevant. So the take-home message from this chapter is that the research design should be determined by the research question and the objective, and also by the strength of evidence that it's feasible for you to achieve.